go past that text and continue after that text.
Sure. So there was Mr. Depp apologized to Ms. Heard for that incident. Mr. Depp said in his UK testimony, well, I only maybe playfully tapped her on the back with my foot. Mr. Depp texted Paul Bettany and talked about how he was so drunk and out of control and engaged in bad behavior. He texted his friend Patty Smith a very similar type of text about how drunk and out of control he was. And then finally, Amber Heard wrote an email talking about how distressed and heartbroken she was.
Objection, hearsay.
I mean, I don't agree.
I know. Sustained. I'll sustain the objection. Next question.
All right. Can you give another example?
I think those are all I can remember at this point.
Okay. So you concluded that Amber Heard used psychological abuse and some reactive physical violence, I think I heard you say. Is that correct?
Objection, leading.
Overruled.
Can you please explain to the jury what you meant by that?
Yes, that is correct. That, Amber Heard reported to me some of the behaviors that she used that were psychologically aggressive, the name calling, the putting him down and calling him very bad names and insulting his fatherhood. And she was very shamed and remorseful about that. She also indicated, using, and as some of the testing showed, minor forms of violence, pushing, shoving, throwing objects. We see that a lot with women when there's not proportional force. Women are more likely to throw objects. And then the more severe act of punching him, which a punch falls in the more severe category. And the context, as she explained it, was that he was coming after Whitney, and she stood, her sister, and she stood in the way and she punched him.
Now, does that make Amber Heard a perpetrator of intimate partner violence?
Objection, leading.
Overruled.
So that was one of the tasks that I had to consider. That was one of the hypotheses that I had to consider. And given all of the other data, that was not my opinion.
Okay, thank you. Now, you stated that you read a number of therapy records. Please tell the jury, why are therapy records important?
Therapy records are critical for a forensic psychologist. When we have the opportunity to go back in time and see what a person was dealing with, what the content of their distress was, and what the symptoms of their distress was, it really gives us a snapshot in time. So they become very critical as part of the overall forensic psychological evaluation, because we as psychologists understand how people sort of treat in therapy and what to look for. So in looking back at Ms. Heard's therapy records, we see sort of real-time unfolding of this dynamic in this relationship. We see early on in her notes in her report with Bonnie Jacobs and in Dr. Bonnie Jacobs' notes, reports of constant concerns about Mr. Depp's substance abuse, constant concerns about him passing out and vomiting, constant concerns about not wanting to—
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay.
She can characterize that and say she relied on that.
Overruled.
Thank you. Please continue.
Constant concerns about how do I get him into treatment? How do I get him help? Ms. Heard starts going to Al-Anon at this point, early 2012, in the beginning of the relationship, because she has to figure out and wants to figure out a way to support the man that she's dating right now and the man who she's falling madly in love with. There were reports in Dr. Jacobs' notes early on about his controlling behavior, about his jealousy behavior, about him not wanting to do certain jobs, of not wanting her to wear certain clothes. So this is going back to 2012. With no indication of why would she be saying that, but for the sole purpose of trying to get help and trying to get guidance in this relationship that she finds so difficult. There are indications, as I mentioned before, of the sexual assault and the sexual abuse and how he would, when he was angry and when he was drunk, it was mostly drug and alcohol fueled rage when he would, throw her on the bed and try to have sex with her. And then, if he was not able to perform, he would get more angry at her and blame her. So we have this dynamic of blaming her for his inability to take responsibility for his behavior. Those themes were throughout Dr. Jacobs' notes.
Did Dr. Jacobs assign any diagnoses to Amber Heard?
She did. Early on, she diagnosed her with panic disorder, and then later with post-traumatic stress disorder.
All right. And did Dr. Jacobs diagnose Amber Heard with borderline personality disorder?
No, she did not.
Histrionic personality disorder?
No, she did not.
And is that important?
That's very important when we're trying to figure out the course of somebody's illness, the course of somebody's psychiatric difficulties. As I stated, well, I don't think I got to state, personality disorders usually start in adolescence early.
Objection.
I'll sustain the objection. Next
Okay.
question.
Okay. You also stated that you reviewed Dr. Connell Cowan's treatment notes, correct?
Correct.
And you also read his deposition testimony?
Correct.
And you had how long of a collateral interview with him?
I believe it was 2 hours.
Okay. And what did you get from all of that data?
So by the time that she gets to Dr. Connell Cowan, which is 2014, I believe, September 2014 is when Dr. Kipper comes on the scene. Ms. Heard's psychological functioning is significantly deteriorated. She's suffering more anxiety, more sleeplessness, more agitation, more emotional dysregulation, this fluctuation in moods. And when you sort of look at the records of what happened in those first 2 years from Dr. Jacobs, and now we have up to Dr. Connell Cowan, and we see all of the incidents that she was exposed to, including the sexual violence and the coercive control, it makes sense to me that her status, her psychological functioning has deteriorated. And in Dr. Connell Cowan's notes, that's what he's always trying to do. He's trying to help her, help Mr. Depp, help her act in a way so that Mr. Depp does not hurt her. Dr. Connell Cowan was very concerned for Amber Heard's safety, as was Dr. Bonnie Jacobs. Dr. Jacobs was very concerned for her safety, and she continued to talk about safety aspects for Ms. Heard, as was Connell Cowan. They did, both of them, both therapists, understood, and Ms. Heard talked to them about it, that there were times that she fought back and she used violence, and times that she screamed and she said things that she didn't want to. But nevertheless, that did not change the balance for them either. And they were very concerned that because of Mr. Depp's significant substance abuse and his sort of poorly controlled anger, that at some point he was going to seriously hurt her.